So my name is Michael Leppitsch. I work for splintered. We are a technology platform that focuses on automation of data flows in a modern data stack. And I'm here to share with you some insights that we learned from our customers that are using our platform to improve productivity and velocity in how they deliver data products inside and outside their organizations. When I told my friends that I'm coming to New Zealand, I got very different perspectives, and I want to share those with you because the perspective on this is really key on how we talk about this topic. When I talked to my Aussie friends, they said, oh yeah, you're coming to ANZ, right? New Zealand's today kind of an appendage to Australia. One perspective. My other friends who come over regularly from California, it's like, oh, it's only 3 time zones away. It's like an extension of America, NZ. Obviously, I edited this because it's actually not real. And when I talked to my Singapore friends, they said, oh yeah, it's part of APAC. Right? Notice that entire countries are gone here on this one. My favorite perspective on this is actually this one. New Zealand kind of at the edge of just this half planet of water. It's pretty amazing. So let's get into the topic. And what I wanted to land here is perspective. We'll share a perspective that's actually informed by our customers and by research. And let me start by sharing some of that research with you. We do a regular annual survey, pulse survey, with data teams around the world. And we found repeatedly and consistently that data teams are just completely overworked, right? And you all know that. And there are actually increasingly using automation. Low code, no code, automation is actually a thing, and they want to use it. There's a demand for automation in these teams. And one of the signals, I'll talk more about signals, is that the people who are in these jobs, data analysts, data scientists, etc., one of the key pain points for them is that they're asked to do things that are outside of the core job description, and it's almost always data wrangling, right? Go get your own data, go find your own sources, create your own analytics, and they spend much of their time actually working with data rather than building the models or building the reports or what they need to do. So what we found with our customers is that they tend to consider automation at some very opportune moments. And these opportunity windows, I'm going to share this with you, just to see if they resonate with you and where your organization is at. There's 5 of them. These are all familiar to you, right? Are you up to a cloud migration? Are you up to a data democratization project? Whether you call it data mesh, data fabric, or business access to data, or whatever you call it. Those are great moments to think about the role of automation in your data teams to be able to serve and meet the requirements of these initiatives. Document across adoption, Snowflake, Databricks, what have you, the movement of data into the cloud and using the automation that's there. And then actually revamping your data stack. So in our title, we talk about data stack. It's the infrastructure, the data itself, and the processes and workflows that you have by which you're extracting value out of data for your business. Thinking about that data stack is a great opportunity to really make sure that you're looking at automation as a way of improving how your future data stack actually is going to operate. And then sometimes it's very tactical, right? It's just certain tools that you've been using for some time are reaching end of life or are unable to tackle some of the requirements that you have. And those data tooling modernization moments are also a great moment to think about, let's look at automation first, rather than as an after effect. So we'll talk more about exactly how that unpacks. The symptoms to listen for in your organization when to see if there's a good time for automation is that there's really not enough data engineers. You have to augment your data engineers and your team with automation to reach new levels of productivity and velocity. And so these are insights that our customers are telling us. The entire team is consumed by just keeping legacy running. We've run into organizations where like over 90% of the team is just literally running the existing stack and just break fixing and bug fixing and trying to keep things running. They just don't have bandwidth to take on any new projects. Another one is just a little bit subtle. If the team is only thinking about infrastructure, right? They're talking about Snowflake, they're talking about tools, they're talking about cloud, but they're not talking about the data, which is actually what the business needs, right? When that mindset is there as a cultural mindset, that's a good time to think about, let's do a reset. Let's talk about how automation is going to bring the focus back to data. If the business is disengaged because they're not getting what they need, I've seen several instances of that. And this one's subtle, but it's really key. The next one, the seams and the silos amongst teams. Right? So if you have an ingest team, and a transformation team, and an ETL team, and a data product team, and like all these teams that are highly specialized and have their own tool sets, and yeah, there's workflow across them, but they really can't collaborate, that's a good signal that maybe it's time to think about automation to improve how these teams collaborate. And again, kind of the tooling conversation, because tools are just are too simple to tackle the new needs for the business. This is an interesting one. One of the symptoms to listen for is whether the in-house team is so frustrated with the tooling that they're starting to build their own data stack in-house. Right? They're going out and doing big software development projects in-house to try to get a data stack together that actually delivers what they think they can deliver with. So that's a good one to talk about automation as well. And then just a fragmentation of innovation. Usually that's an artifact of legacy architectural patterns being used to run and organize the teams and the work and the technology. And that often results in fragmented innovation in all these different teams, selecting tools within these different teams and fragmentations. It's time to think about a more end-to-end approach to automation. So what are we actually trying to do? What do we get out of the automation? What's the goal? It's about speed and efficiency with these teams to be able to deliver value faster. And these are quotes from our customers. So this is data for us about what is the value prop that Ascent provides. And these are literally quotes that they often give us like unprompted. We got things done in an hour that used to take me weeks. That was just amazing, right? Everybody on the team can collaborate and learn together and use a consistent UI to know what everybody's doing and how everything's flowing. The next one is, when we think about automation, often people talk about like command line tools and code and running lots of code that often end up kind of black box and become tech debt. So having good UI experiences by which you can communicate with business stakeholders, with government stakeholders, with all the people that are actually involved in governing and operating these pipelines end to end is actually pretty key. It's interesting, the data engineers end up going back to the command line, which is great, but everything is visible through UIs and is navigable and shareable. Another one, taking on projects that were impossible before. So we have a pretty broad span of customers from startups all the way to large enterprises. And regardless of that breadth, they're all up to new things. They want to do new things, they have new business requirements that just they can't get done. It's time to look at automation, and it's actually achievable. Great. So a couple things. Automation isn't new. Automation is actually coming up the stack. You've probably heard that before. Kubernetes is a big game changer in terms of how infrastructure is automated. Before that, you had a lot of system administration tools. You had system administrators, that's actually their job, to build and run infrastructure. And Kubernetes really changed that world, especially in a cloud context, but even in an on-prem context. So that was one wave. It's coming up the stack. When you look at storage, there used to be a world of databases and DBAs, and we still have those today, right? Nothing ever ends. But the emergence of these serverless data infrastructures like Snowflake and Databricks is a game changer. It's a form of automation that really frees up the teams to focus on data and focus on the work to be done, and less about the underlying systems. So the proposition here is that it's time for automation of data pipelines, which is the data actually flowing through this infrastructure and delivering value. And traditionally that comes out of the world of ETL. So all of you are familiar with ETL tools, et cetera, and all the tooling around that and different kinds of capabilities. The idea with, obviously with our platform, but with next generation automation, is that it's time for automation that actually solves that problem end to end and renovates and frees up teams to be able to go back and focus on the data and delivering business value. So what is it that we're actually talking about now that the table is set? I'm going to take a little bit of time on this slide. This is kind of the money slide today. When we talk about data pipelines and automation, we usually start with a set of capabilities that are familiar to everybody. One is ingestion, like how do I get the data from source systems of various kinds, external, internal, I get them into a place where I can start working with it. Then start to transform that data to actually synergize it, to create data products out of it. And so those transformation steps are sometimes in ETL, sometimes in an ELT context, depending on your, again, your perspective. And at the end of that, you have data products that you need to deliver back out to a machine learning platform, a BI tool, the other teams downstream, including reverse ETL. So we're starting to see more and more reverse ETL use cases where the final data product actually goes back into the application. And then across all this, there's orchestration. And people have been using orchestration tools for a long time as, again, point solutions. In fact, all four of these, you'll find lots of tools that are sitting in there solving that particular problem. Right? But the problem is that there's seams in between these. So as we think about what's the glue that can hold all this together, what we have found and what we've implemented is a new way to think about metadata. Right? So metadata, we know, it's data that describes data. We're talking about schemas. When we're talking about passive metadata, it's schemas, it's formats, it's periodicity, arrival times of data, et cetera, the source system, what are the versions of source systems, et cetera. That's more passive metadata, but there's several other ones that come into play that we can harness to actually create this next level of automation we've been talking about. One of them is to actually treat the code that's processing the data in each of these steps in the pipeline as metadata. And that code also has metadata about it. Like when was it written, who wrote it, where does it sit in the order of operations, what is the code trying to accomplish? Is it joining tables, is it processing partitions, what is it actually doing? So that type of metadata, it's about the code. The next one is operational metadata. And here we're talking about data that's being generated by the running of pipelines primarily, like which job it ran, where did it run, how long did it take, how many resources did it take, in what order was it, what did it run, et cetera, right? So this operational data, that's actually operations about the pipeline, are things that we're trying to automate, right? Things that we're trying to get more efficient around. So that's a key part of it. This technical piece is a new piece of metadata. And this technical piece of metadata is the metadata that's actually generated by the automation process itself, right? And in Ascend, for example, we have a technology that we call fingerprinting, or SHAs. We fingerprint every piece of data and every piece of code. It's a very fast process computationally, but it allows us to detect change. And so this technical data, metadata, includes the SHAs. It includes detecting the change on the underlying code or data, so you can immediately respond and propagate change through your pipelines. And that's really functionally what automation starts to look like. The point is there's a different category of metadata that didn't exist before that's actually generated by the process itself. So with all that in place, now it unlocks a new capability. And this capability, we put those into 3 steps. And this is actually a continuously flowing process. Now let's start over here by the evaluating continuously, because that builds exactly what I was just talking about, this automation-generated metadata. You can detect when things have changed and react immediately, right? And so, for example, if the schema's changed, you want to be able to propagate those schema changes through pipelines. If that data arrived, you want to propagate just that newly arriving data through the pipelines. You don't want to have to rerun pipelines every time there's a new change in data or a change in code, right? Somebody makes a bug fix in a transformation or refactors a transformation and breaks that up into multiple steps, for example, to get more efficient. That's a change in code, but you want to propagate, capture that change right away and process that as part of your automation. So that continues on the evaluation, drives the next one, which is the autonomous operation, kind of what I was talking about, propagating change immediately and instantly and autonomously, but in such a way that you can actually still detect signal and instrument it so it doesn't run amok. And so at the heart of this is the linkage of the code and the data, and we've actually developed a technology we call data aware, where the technology is aware of all these changes and maintains these linkages, which you probably know as lineage, data lineage. And we've been able to harness this process to guarantee data lineage throughout data pipelines. So that's a new level of automation that hasn't existed before, and gets us closer to the ability of making data teams more effective. So now that we have kind of an engine running here, there's several benefits that come out of that. This is our last loop here. First of all, it allows us to insert actionable data quality. So if you know about data quality, it's analyzing the data to look for outliers, look for patterns, understand your data. That's all great. Those are usually after the fact kind of analytics on data. By actual data quality, we're talking about immediately in the flow, in real time, looking for flaws in the data. And so you can, because you want to stop a pipeline if it's not right. You want to be able to send an alert, or maybe you keep it running, you pause another part of the pipeline, et cetera. Some actionability in there. It's a subcategory of data quality, but with this automation, it's really important to be able to have that, so data pipelines can run amok. The next piece is data lineage, what we call a cross-data plane data lineage. One of the things that we thought was really important about automation that is actually abstracted away from the underlying compute infrastructure and even the data infrastructure. So you can actually run pipelines on Snowflake, on Databricks, on BigQuery, on AWS, what have you. And you can actually make choices about what engine you want to harness for your particular workloads. And it could be in the future, and a lot of our customers are doing this, it's multiple types of workloads, and they want to be able to use Databricks for one thing and Snowflake for another thing. And so being able to link everything we've been talking about across these workflows, decoupled from the actual engine that you're using for any particular workload, was a key objective and improves the level of automation you can achieve. The next one is data product costing, using the metadata so you can actually detect how much did it cost to generate a particular data product, which with this level of detail of metadata, you can actually do that. That pinpoints you where you can tune data pipelines. It pinpoints what investments you're making into a data product. Maybe it informs a monetization strategy. You're trying to create profitable data products like a lot of startups do. This is a key piece. It's also important to be able to have this whole thing plug into your overall CI/CD lifecycle management for all your systems, right? If you're upgrading a report, the data product that feeds that report, upstream system that's feeding the data pipelines, you often need to coordinate all those upgrades at once and have one CI/CD workflow govern all that. So you will need to be able to plug that to be able to support the automation of your development process as well. And then finally, the whole thing, this new way of automating things needs to be highly observable. Right? You need to be able to look at UIs and reports and graphs and charts and lineage to actually understand and explain to everybody involved, to all the stakeholders that are involved, what's going on in real time, after the fact, do analytics after the fact, plan forward how much infrastructure you'll need for your next set of initiatives that you're going to be using this automation for, et cetera. Cool. So we're talking about end-to-end automation, and a couple of things to say about that. One is you're going to break up silos in your organization to really achieve that. That doesn't mean that you're breaking up the teams, right? You still have expertise, but maybe you're able to unblock workflows. So one thing that's really important is get your data things back into data and get them out of the coding custom platform. The next one is about collaboration, and unified platforms that synthesize and bring all this together under one umbrella are really key to unlocking that kind of collaboration. And then these scenes that we've been talking about, they actually turn out to be bear traps because that's where the metadata breaks. Right? When you have metadata about the whole process that you can stitch together and create this end-to-end capability, these scenes have been in the way of being able to do that. And then at the end of the day, a lot of our customers report being able to reduce their overall tool set and just have savings in terms of licenses and infrastructure maintenance and keeping things working. So I invite you to explore our platform that actually implements this type of automation that we've been talking about. We're out here, we have a booth, and people keep telling us, oh, you have to show this for people to actually buy into and believe that this kind of thing can exist. So that's why we're here. We want to be able to show it to you. We actually run on all the data engines that I've been talking about, Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, Spark, so we can show that to you. We also have a free developer tier. This is a little bit new to lower the barrier of entry for people to be able to explore and try out this kind of capability. We do free trials, and what that means is there's a lot of hesitation about bringing this kind of thing into organizations. So we will actually do a complete production-grade installation of the product into your cloud account, and operationalize a real business case with you and with your team so you can see the whole thing end-to-end before you make a buy decision for this kind of capability. It does change the way work is done. So that is a big part of the trial, is it actually shows you what changes about the way work is done. And then last but not least is we're super partner-friendly and partner-driven organization, which is why Cyrus here is a big partner for us here in New Zealand. Really understands and is an advocate for this type of automation to raise the productivity and effectiveness of data teams. But on the technology side, we partner very closely with these technology platforms so that you don't have to code. You don't have to make this type of automation work with some other engine that you've chosen. So we are very close partners, technology partners with all these infrastructure companies. Cool. So I invite you to a conversation after this. I'm out here, Kevin and Tom, we're all here from the US. And so thank you very much for your time.
We've got a couple of questions, actually.
Oh, good.
So, what is the future of the modern data stack in your opinion? Oh, this is a big question.
Future of the modern data stack. It's interesting. Internally, we talk actually about a postmodern data stack. What happens when you have this level of automation and you can actually mix and match engines, right? And we actually have customers that they love using Snowflake for data analytics team that loves SQL. And then they have another team that does data science that love Databricks because they can do the machine modeling and that type of infrastructure. So how do you bridge that? And I think the modern data stack actually treats all these infrastructures as something that's interoperable. And so that actually changes, I think, the way people approach the data stack as more of a collection of things that can be brought together with automation, as opposed to having to have lots of tools that you have to code together by hand.
Great. What are the common mistakes that companies make in modernizing their data infrastructure? Top three, let's say.
Yeah, I think probably, and I hinted at this in the talk, using your existing more legacy architectural patterns and replicating them on modern infrastructure. That seems to be a pretty common mistake. And the way to do that is actually to hire somebody who can help you, right? Like a consultancy, somebody who's actually on board with what you're trying to accomplish, and looks at it from a very strategic perspective, and then breaks it down, not just the functional requirements of how do you deliver a report, but actually how does our team work? You know, how do we use automation, and how do we level our entire capability?
Then, last one we have here, how do successful companies think about data products?
Oh, this is a good one. I just gave a talk on this one a couple weeks ago. So data products are things that are useful to a customer. Right? So just like any product, we can think about it that way. And so your customer is a report writer, is a machine learning team, it's an AI capability, and you want to deliver that, or even external users, right? What's that product need to look like? Literally down to the brass tacks of what's the format, how do you ship it, what's the delivery mechanism, but more importantly, the semantic of it. And then being able to take all your raw inputs, it's literally a supply chain of data. Like, where do I need to get the data to be able to create that product? External systems, internal systems, et cetera. And then how do I coalesce that into a data product using, basically it's an analogy of a factory, right? These data pipelines. And so that gives you, first of all, you start asking questions about cost. Costing is super important. You ask questions about who's actually going to use it and why. And ultimately, what's the value to the business? Right? So data products drive that kind of conversation. So that's good. That's what we see being a super successful pattern.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Much appreciated.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.